Shalom, shalom, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Trumpet's Call. I'm Maria. I pray that you are holding on to faith, amunah, and holding on to hope during these times. Thank you for joining me once again for another teaching on the channel. And we will be continuing a lesson that we began last Shabbat on the men of Zion and how they relate to King Shaul, King Saul. On last week, we discussed King Saul and how he rose from essentially nothingness. He was a man of the smallest tribe, the tribe of Benjamin, and he was small in his own eyes. He was humble, and the Father chose him. Even though he was small in his own eyes, Scripture says he was head and shoulders above everyone else. He was tall and good looking, and he had such hope and promise. But once he became king, he got a taste of the approval of the people, and that began to derail his ministry, his kingship, as he sought to please the people and not the Most High. It wasn't long into his kingship, into his reign, that he was excluded by the Most High. The Most High gave him explicit instructions, and he knew that he was not to offer up sacrifices in place of the priest. That was the priest's role. So King Shaul, King Saul, stepped out of his role and offered up sacrifices to hear from the Most High before a battle. And the Most High rejected him and said, I'm going to choose a man after my own heart. And of course we know that was King David. And so that left this man who had an impurity in him. He had a frailty, a weakness, a lameness in his mind, body, soul, and his heart. It left him like a lame duck for the remainder of his reign. He knew that he was already being rejected as king, and so he just had to wait it out in time to see when it would happen, when he would no longer be king. We read where he went to battle, but could not gain a victory because only he and Jonathan had swords. And their enemies, the Philistines, forbade anyone who was an Israelite from knowing how to sharpen weapons, which is crazy to me. So they did not have swords, and they could not and did not have the ability to sharpen the tools that they did have, which is a frailty and a weakness and infirmity for certain. So as we read on, we saw that they went to battle, and you see Saul at an impasse with the Philistines. No one's moving, no one's going in, no one's going out. He's just sitting, waiting. So we're going to continue our lesson in 1 Samuel chapter 14. Now it happened one day that Jonathan, the son of Saul, Shaul, said to the young man who bore his armor bearer, Come, let us go over to the Philistines' garrisons that is on the other side. But he did not tell his father. And Shaul was sitting in the outskirts of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree, which is in Migron, and the people who were with him were about 600 men. If we remember from last week, we discussed that Saul was eager to make the sacrifices and was not willing to wait for Samuel to come and perform his priestly duty of offering the sacrifice before the Most High, because Saul's army was leaving him. They were deserting. Some of them were going over to the other side to join up with the Philistines. Others were hiding in dens and caves of the earth. They were afraid. They were running into the woods. They were hiding because they were afraid. And he was afraid of losing their support. He was afraid of looking bad in front of their eyes, I imagine. And he was afraid of being left without an army. So when he had 600 men left, he said, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and offer the sacrifice. So here he sits under a pomegranate tree in Migron with those same 600 men, waiting. He's waiting. He's at a standstill. He won't move forward to go and attack the Philistines, and the Philistines have not attacked him. So they're just waiting, sitting, trying to figure out what's going to happen next. But we have Jonathan, Saul's son, and he says to his armor bearer, Come, let us go into the enemy's camp. Let us go into the Philistines' garrisons that is on the other side. Let us cross over to the other side. We've been stuck here long enough. We've been stuck and trapped in indecision and defeat and frailty and weakness and lameness long enough. Let us go over to the other side. Let us go. But he did not tell his father. Why? Why, brothers and sisters? Why do you think? Why did not Jonathan tell his father? Well, there are a number of reasons we could probably come up with. But right off the bat, I'm thinking Jonathan did not tell his father because his father would probably say, "Don't go. Don't go, Jonathan. Don't go over to the other side. Stay here with me. Stay here in weakness and lameness and frailty and fear and guilt and indecision and punishment and cursing. Stay here with me. Don't cross over to the other side." So Jonathan crossed over, and he didn't tell his father. His father, who was sitting under a pomegranate tree, trying to figure out what to do next. Continuing. Ahijah, the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, Yahuah's priest in Shiloh, was wearing an ephod. But the people did not know that Jonathan, had gone. Then Jonathan said to the young man who bore his armor, "Come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that Yahuah will work for us," meaning Yahuah will grant us a victory. Okay, so we read here that Ahijah, the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas. So Eli was the priest of the Most High until he sinned and was judged of the Most High. So one of his relatives, Ahitub, was the priest wearing the ephod at this time. So he was the priest who was ministering before the Most High in Shiloh. And it's interesting that we see this word mentioned, Ichabod, Ichabod's brother. If you remember the backstory regarding Ichabod, it was during the time when Eli and his sons were about to be judged of the Most High for their sins. And it was stated that Ichabod, the glory had departed. So this word Ichabod essentially means the glory has departed. And we see, indeed, King Saul, the glory has departed from his ministry, from his kingship, from his reign. He started off well, doing the things that were pleasing in the Most High's sight. But here we find him under a pomegranate tree at an impasse with his enemies. He's unable to hear from the Most High. He doesn't know whether to go left or go right. He doesn't know whether to go forward or backward because he can't hear from the Most High because he stepped out of order and out of line. So he doesn't know which way to go. So for him, it's Ichabod, the glory, the insight, the wisdom, the guidance of the Most High has departed. And Jonathan, the hope in the future of Shaul, his son, his strength, his right hand, is gone. And no one knows that he is left. No one knows that the hope of Yasharal and the one who is to inherit the kingship, that he's gone, that he's making a daring and bold move, going into the enemy's camp to see if perhaps the Most High will grant him a victory. Hallelujah. Yahuah. Jonathan is walking in great faith before the Most High right now. And won't the Most High reward those who diligently seek him? Those who walk in faith and amunah? Continuing. For nothing restrains Yahuah from saving by many or by few. So his armor bearer said to him, "Do all that is in your heart. Go then. Here I am with you, according to your heart." Then Jonathan said, "Very well, let us cross over to these men, and we will show ourselves to them. If they say thus to us, 'Wait until we come to you,' then we will stand still in our place and not go up to them. But if they say to us, 'Come up to us,' then we will go up. For Yahuah has delivered them into our hand, and this will be a sign unto us." Okay, so I'm going to pause here. We're going to go back and go over these verses. So Jonathan is a man of faith. And right now, he is so unlike his father, who is a man lacking faith at this moment, sitting under the pomegranate tree, trapped in a state of indecision. For nothing restrains Yahuah from saving, by many or by few. Jonathan is saying, nothing can prevent the Father from granting you a victory, no matter what. No matter if the enemy is a few, or no matter if it's many. Nothing can stop the Father from granting you the victory, even if it's just two of us, or if we have a whole army of people. He can save, he can deliver. So Jonathan is demonstrating his faith in the Father and his confidence in his power. He's willing to step out in faith and say, perhaps the Most High will grant us the victory. But even if he doesn't, I know that he has the power to save, that he has the power to grant us the deliverance that we seek. So his armor bearer says, do all that is in your heart. In this relationship between Jonathan and his armor bearer, it's a very unique and special relationship because the armor bearer literally bears his armor. He is the one that is closest to him in battle. And Jonathan has to depend on his armor bearer to be there for him, to be next to him, to bear his sword, to bear his armor, to be there to have what he needs when he needs it. So he is someone who is a trusted confidant. And his trusted confidant says, I'm with you. Whatever you need, I'm here. I'm here with you. So Jonathan has a plan. He says, we're going to cross over and we're going to show ourselves to these Philistines. And if the Philistines say something to the effect of, wait right there, we're coming over to get you. We're going to jack you up and we're going to defeat you. Just wait right there. We're coming. We're coming over to you. If they say something of that effect, then Jonathan says, we're going to stand still and not do anything because that's a sign that the Father has not granted us the victory. But if we say we're coming over there and they say, yeah, come on over. Come over. And then we're going to jack you up. And then we're going to defeat you once you get over here. He says that'll be a sign to us that the Father is going to grant us the victory. So Jonathan spoke those words as a fleece unto the Most High. And let's see what the Father says. Let's see what the Father does. So both of them showed themselves to the garrison of the Philistines. And the Philistines said, look, the Hebrews are coming out of the holes where they've been hiding. So think about this. Think about how embarrassing this is. They know, the Philistines know that the Hebrews, Yasharal, they have been hiding. They have been running scared, shaking in their boots. They don't have swords. They don't have shields. They don't have anything to protect themselves. They're just out running scared from the Philistines. The king is sitting under a pomegranate tree, trapped in indecision. Okay? So our enemies, the Philistines, the enemies of our ancestors, are mocking them. And then they see these two. And they say, look, they're coming out of their hiding. They're coming out of their holes. They dug a hole in the earth and now they're coming out. So it's very much a mocking tone. Okay? But they didn't say, we're going to come over there and get you. They didn't say that. They essentially said, come on over. And then the men of the garrison called to Jonathan and his armor bearer and said, come on over, come up to us, and we will show you something. Meaning, come on over here and we're going to jack you up. We're going to defeat you, but we're not going to come to you. We're going to make you come to us, and then we'll jack you up. Okay? That's what they're saying. And Jonathan said to his armor bearer, come up after me. For Yahuah has delivered them into the hand of Yasharal. He knew. He put out a fleece before the Most High. He said, I don't know if the Father's going to grant me the victory, but I'm going to try. I'm going to step out of the land of indecision. I am not going to sit under this pomegranate tree with my father. I'm not even going to tell him that I've left. I'm not going to get trapped in his lameness, in his indecision, in his frailty of flesh, in his cursing, in his guilt before the Most High. I'm not going to get trapped in that. I'm going to step out and I'm going to see if the Father will grant me the victory. I'm crossing over to the other side. And this is what I'm going to say. Father, if you meet these conditions, if they tell us to come unto them, We know that you're going to grant us the victory. And that's exactly what happened. So Jonathan said, come on, armor bearer, let's go. We're about to win a war right now. Come on, let's go. Jonathan said to his armor bearer, come up after me, for Yahuah hath delivered them into the hand of Yasharal. And Jonathan, climbed up on his hands and knees with his armor bearer after him. And they fell before Jonathan, meaning the Philistines. And as he came after him, his armor bearer killed them. That first slaughter which Jonathan and his armor bearer made was about 20 men within about a half an acre of land. So within about a half acre of a space of land, they had killed 20 people. And they had just arrived in town. They had just come into the land of the Philistines, and the Father was already granting them a great victory, and they were making a great slaughter as they entered the land of the Philistines, their enemies. Continuing. And there was trembling in the camp, in the Philistines' camp, in the field and among all the people. The garrison and the raiders also trembled, and the earth shook, so that it was a very great trembling. Now the watchmen of Saul in Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and there was the multitude melting away, and they went here and there. And Saul said to the people who were with him, now call the roll, and see who is gone from us. And when they had called the roll, surprisingly, Jonathan and his armor bearer were not there. Hallelujah. Pausing. We see the Most High here giving Jonathan and his armor bearer a great victory. And you know what the Father does. He makes such a tumult when he gives the victory to our ancestors, when he did in the past, that he would cause the enemy to fight themselves, because they would be running scared in every direction and they would be attacking themselves. So there was such a tumult that was happening when Jonathan and his armor bearer came and they killed those first 20 men. The Philistines were trying to get away. They were the ones running scared now. They were the ones running into the woods now. They were the ones digging holes in the earth and climbing in them now. Now they're the ones who were running. The same ones who mocked the Hebrews, now they're the ones who were on the run. And the Most High caused the earth to tremble and to shake. And there was a shaking in the land, and that terrified the Philistines even more. And now all they want is to get out of town. But they can't, because the Most High is causing his 2 men to come in, and he is granting them a great victory. And so across the way, Shaul, sitting under his pomegranate tree, they look over and they see a tumult. They say, something's happening over there. Look. There's skirmishing, there's fighting, people are fighting one another. What's going on over there? Somebody's gone over there and stirred up trouble. Which one of our people has done that? Call the roll. Call the roll, call the roll. Let's do a roll call and see who's here and who has left. So they did a roll call, and it was determined that Jonathan, his son, and his armor bearer were missing. They were not there. And Shaul said to Ahijah, bring the ark of Yahuah here, for at that time the ark of Yahuah was with the children of Yasharal. Now what happened while Saul talked to the priest, that the noise which was in the camp of the Philistines continued to increase. So Saul said to the priest, withdraw your hand. Then Saul and all the people who were with him assembled, and they went to the battle. And indeed, every man's sword was against his neighbor, and there was very great confusion. So when they saw all the fighting going on over there, Saul was like, okay, I guess we have to go fight. Let's go. Come on, let's go. Let's go fight. So they joined in with the battle, because it was clear that the Father was granting a victory over there. Continuing. Moreover, the Hebrews who were with the Philistines before that time went up with them into the camp from the surrounding country. They also joined the Israelites, or the Yasharalites, who were with Shaul and Jonathan. Likewise, all the men of Yasharal who had hidden in the mountains of Ephraim, when they heard that the Philistines fled, they also followed hard after them in battle. So Yahuah saved Yasharal that day, and the battle shifted to Beth Aven. Wow, what a difference a day makes. What a difference it makes when someone steps out in faith. What we have here is a great battle and a great victory that the Most High has given to those who have believed in Him and sought Him out and said, perhaps the Most High will grant us a victory. So we see Saul, and the other Israelites, Yasharal, joining the battle, and they're winning. They're slaughtering the enemy. They're winning. And even those who had joined the camp of the Philistines because they were afraid, those who were traitors to Yasharal, who had turned and were now fighting on the side of their enemies, once they saw the victory, they were like, I want to be on the winning side. Let me go ahead and turn my coat again and come back over to the side that's winning. And so they came back and they were fighting on the side of Yasharal, and they were winning. And even those who had run away and had hidden in the mountains of Ephraim, when they heard that they were running scared, they came and they said, we want to fight now. We didn't before because we thought we were going to lose. And now that we see that the tide has turned, we too want to be part of this great move that the Most High is doing here among our people. So they come back as well. So Yahuah saved Yasharal that day, and the battle shifted to Beth-aven. So the Philistines ran away, but some of them would live to fight again another day. But the Most High granted Yasharal the victory on this day, and it came about as a result of the faith of one man and his armor bearer. Continuing. And the men of Yasharal were distressed that day, for Saul had placed the people under oath, saying, Cursed is the man who eats any food until evening, before I have taken vengeance on my enemies. So none of the people tasted food. Now all the people of the land came to a forest, and there was honey on the ground. And when the people had come into the woods, there was the honey dripping, but no one put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. This is another one of those rash decisions that King Saul is unfortunately known for. First of all, there would be no victory had not the Most High granted it. There would be no victory had not his son stepped out in faith and gone into the enemy's camp. But now that this is happening and he's been granted a taste of victory, he says now he wants vengeance on his enemies. He wants to go after them and chase them down until he catches every single Philistine and he gives them what for. That's his desire. He wants to defeat his enemies completely and totally. Okay? And so what does he do? He gives his army, this 600 men, probably more now since those who had run away have now come back. But he gives them this oath. He makes them essentially receive and accept his oath that if they eat anything before evening, they would be under a curse. Now, why in the world would you want to prevent your army, the people who are out there, your men, they're fighting for you. They need their strength. They need their sustenance. Why would you think it was a good idea, if you're a leader, to ban or prevent people from eating even a little honey to keep their strength up when they're fighting? It's just another one of those decisions that King Saul makes that makes you scratch your head and go, I don't understand it. I don't really get it. But there it was. The people are out. They're in the woods. Honey is dripping from the trees onto the ground, and they see it. And not a man reaches out his hand to take any honey because they feared the oath. No one wanted to be cursed. They were hungry. They could have used that honey. It could have strengthened them. It could have been as if a gift from the Most High to keep them and to help them to gain their strength. But their leader prevented them. Their leader prevented them from taking into their bodies the very thing that might help to sustain them. Continuing. But Jonathan had not heard his father's charge the people with the oath, and therefore he stretched out the end of the rod that was in his hand, and dipped it in a honeycomb, and put his hand to his mouth, and his countenance brightened. Then one of the people said, Your father strictly charged the people with an oath, saying, Cursed is the man who eats food this day. And the people were faint. So we see Jonathan. But Jonathan had not heard about the oath. He didn't get the memo. He was not in on this cursed if you eat deal. He didn't know. And so he dipped the end of his rod into the honeycomb, and he put his hand to his mouth, and his countenance brightened. And any and everyone who would have been allowed to eat that honey would have had their countenance brighten as well. It truly seemed as if it was a gift from the Most High. But the leader prevented the men from having it. Why? Why? It seemed good in his own eyes to make this decision. And we, as leaders and as people, have to guard against doing what seems good in our own eyes. It seemed good in my own eyes to make this rash decision, and it may not be best for you or the people that you serve. We have to be careful about the decisions that we make so that we don't find ourselves fighting against our own people with the decisions that we're making on their behalf. This was not a good decision. It was not a good decision because the men were faint. They were so hungry. They were exerting so much effort and strength, running through the wilderness trying to catch these Philistines, and yet they weren't even able to pick up a little honey off the ground or dripping from a honeycomb and allow their countenance to brighten. They weren't allowed to eat it because they feared the curse of their leader. Continuing. But Jonathan said, "My father has troubled the land. Look now how my countenance has brightened, because I tasted a little of this honey. How much better if the people had eaten freely today of the spoil of their enemies, which they found. For now would there not have been a much greater slaughter among the Philistines?" Now they had driven back the Philistines that day from Michmash to Ajalon, and the people were very faint. Jonathan said, and he's speaking truth here. He's not sugarcoating anything, apparently. He's speaking truth. He's saying, "My father has troubled the land." He makes that decree. He sees his father's weakness. He sees his frailty. He sees his indecision. He sees how he is troubling the land and making life difficult for the people under his leadership. He sees it, and he acknowledges it openly. He says, "My father has troubled the land. Look now how my countenance has brightened, because I tasted a little of this honey. I tasted a little bit of the gift of the Ruach. I tasted, and it was sweet and good, and it brightened my countenance. Wouldn't it have been better for all of us to have been allowed to taste and see how good Yahuah is? This honey, this sweet honey dripping from the honeycomb, would it have been good for all of us to be able to receive from the Most High's hand for us? But no, we were banished. We were banned, and we were told that if we reached out our hand to receive some of this bounty, some of the spoils of war, that we would be cursed. And the people were faint. They were ready to pass out. They were so hungry and tired. They needed some sustenance. They needed some calories in their bodies. And it was right there, but they couldn't touch it because they feared the wrath of the king. And Jonathan said, "Wouldn't it have been greater, an even greater slaughter among the Philistines if the people were allowed to eat of the bounty that's been given to them? Couldn't we go farther? Couldn't we do more? Couldn't we reach higher heights and deeper depths? Couldn't we accomplish more for the kingdom of the Shemaim if the fathers would not banish and ban the sons from stepping out? Are the fathers so insecure that they would hold their sons back from being greater than they are?" It's a question for the ages. Continuing. And the people rushed on the spoil and took sheep, oxen, and calves and slaughtered them on the ground, and the people ate them with the blood. Then they told Saul, saying, "Look, the people are sinning against Yahuah by eating with the blood." So he said, "You have dealt treacherously. Roll a large stone to me this day." Then Shaul said, "Disperse yourselves among the people, and say to them, Bring me here every man's ox and every man's sheep. Slaughter them here and eat. Okay, in this section we see that the people are hungry. And when they saw Jonathan, the king's son, eating this honey and him saying that his father had troubled the land, they're like, we can't take it anymore. We can't be expected to continue on at this pace without being fed. We've got to be fed. We need rations. We need to be able to eat. We need our countenance brightened. So they paused. They stopped. And they rushed and they took the spoil that they were taking from the Philistines. They were taking sheep and oxen and calves, and they were not allowed to kill and eat them because of the king's commandment. Well, they stopped and they slaughtered them. And they killed them, and they cooked them, and they ate them. But they did not drain the blood first. It's a part of our heritage and a part of our practices that when you kill and slaughter an animal to eat, you allow the blood to drain out before you cook it and eat it. They were so hungry, they killed the animal, and they immediately set to cooking it. So they didn't allow the blood to drain out. Now, it doesn't mean that there was blood in the food. It just means that they didn't allow the blood to drain out first before they cooked it. And then we see Shaul saying, look, the people are sinning against Yahuah by eating blood. And he's right. He's right. They shouldn't have done that. But why couldn't he see where he went wrong? Why couldn't he see that he should not have forbade the people from eating when they were hungry? Why couldn't he see that good leadership gives the people what they need when they need it so that they can continue on? Why couldn't he see that? Why couldn't he see his own weakness and his own frailty? Why was it that he could always see other people's weaknesses and their frailties, but he couldn't see his own? He tells his leaders, roll a stone and then disperse yourselves amongst the people. Go to the people wherever they are and tell them, listen, bring your ox and bring your sheep and slaughter them here on this rock, and we will hang them up so that the blood can drain out. And you can eat your sheep and your oxen in the correct way. So he's given them a means by which they can eat the oxen the correct way by having the blood drained out of it first. And he goes on to say, and do not sin against Yahuah by eating with the blood. So every one of the people brought his ox with him that night and slaughtered it there. Then Saul built an altar to Yahuah. This was the first altar that he built to Yahuah. Now Shaul said, let us go down after the Philistines by night and plunder them until the morning light, and let us not leave a man of them. And they said, do whatever seems good to you. And the priest said, let us draw near unto Yahuah here. So Shaul had an idea, yet another idea. First idea was, let's sit under this pomegranate tree and wait and see what happens. Then the idea was, well, there's something happening in the enemy's camp. Let's go over there and fight. Let's fight, rah, rah, rah. So they go over there and fight. And then once they're there, there's proclamation. No one's to eat anything until sunset. So the people were fighting and they became faint and they couldn't eat anything. They couldn't even eat some honey that fell to the ground. That was Shaul's decision. And then evening came and it was time for the people to eat. And the people were so hungry they weren't even willing to allow the blood to drain out of the animals. Shaul said, bring them, set them up on the rock, and allow the blood to drain out so that you can keep Torah and not break Torah. Because it's important that we not break Torah. And he's right. He's absolutely right. And so then, once the people are refreshed, he says, oh, I know. You haven't eaten all day. Now you just ate a big meal, and I know you must be tired. So let's go fight some more. Let's hunt down the Philistines and fight them and plunder them all night long and into the morning so that you get no sleep. So the people were like, okay, King, whatever you say, we'll do whatever you say. You're the boss. But you know they must have been thinking, I just had me some chicken McNuggets and I'm tired. I need a nap. But they weren't allowed to say that. But the priest said, let us draw near unto Yahuah. The priests are saying, King, O King, let us consult the Father and see what he is saying we should do. Let us not lean unto our own understanding, but in all of our ways let us acknowledge Yahuah, and he will direct our paths. Let us consult the Father. But Shaul hadn't thought about that. He just made a determination, he made a decision, and he said, hey, let's do this, let's do that, let's go left, let's go right, let's go up, let's go down, let's go sit under a pomegranate tree. He's leaning onto his own understanding, and he's not being directed and guided by the Most High. Continuing. So Saul asked the council of Yahuah. In response to the priests, he says, yeah, sure, okay, let's ask the Most High. So Saul asked the council of Yahuah, shall I go down after the Philistines? Will you deliver them into the hand of Yasharal? But he did not answer him that day. And Shaul said, come over here, all you chiefs of the people, and know and see what this sin was today. For as Yahuah lives, who saves Yasharal, though it be in Jonathan my son, he shall surely die. But not a man among all the people answered him. Then he said to all Yasharal, you be on one side, and my son Jonathan and I on the other side. So when the father did not answer Shaul, he said, oh, there's sin in the camp. There is sin in the camp, because the father would have answered me. There's sin in the camp. We got to figure out who sinned, and I don't care even if it's my own son. He says, whoever has sinned is going to die. Another rash decision from King Saul. So now he's decreeing and declaring death upon anyone who has sinned today, even if it was his own son. So Jonathan and Shaul stood on one side, and all the people stood on the other, and the lot fell on Jonathan and Saul. And the people said to Saul, do what seems good to you. And therefore Shaul said to Yahuah, Aluah of the Yasharal, give a perfect lot. So essentially he's saying, please let the lot fall perfectly. Let it fall so that we may determine where the blame lies. So Saul and Jonathan were taken, but the people escaped. So the lot fell on Jonathan and Saul, and the people were not indicated as being guilty. And Saul said, cast lots between my son Jonathan and me. And Jonathan was taken. Then Saul said to Jonathan, tell me what you have done. So the lot fell on Jonathan, and it was being said that he had done something wrong. Because remember, Shaul brought forth the oath, and everyone was obliged to obey it because he's the king. Now, whether or not it be a righteous oath or unrighteous, he decreed it and declared it, so everyone was obliged to keep it. And when Jonathan dipped his rod into the honey, he didn't know he was breaking an oath because no one told him. But still, the lot came up against him and said that he was the one who had broken the commandment given by his father. So Jonathan was taken. Then Saul said to Jonathan, tell me what you have done. And Jonathan told him and said, I only tasted a little honey with the end of the rod that was in my hand. So now I must die? Saul answered, Yahuah do so and more also for you shall surely die, Jonathan. But the people said to Shaul, shall Jonathan die? Who has accomplished this great deliverance in Yasharal? Certainly not. As Yahuah lives, not one hair of his head shall fall to the ground, for he has worked with Yahuah this day. So the people rescued Jonathan, and he did not die. Then Shaul returned from pursuing the Philistines, and the Philistines went to their own place. You know, decisions are being made here. Hither and yon, up, down, back, right, up, wherever, all over the place. There's so many decisions being made, and Shaul is not consulting the Father. And so he's in for a penny, in for a pound one moment, and the next minute he's done. One moment he wants to seek out the Philistines and search after them and fight them all night long and take spoil. The very next minute he's like, okay, we're done. Let's go to bed. It's hard to keep up. And we're just reading the story here. We're not actually living it with him. Can you imagine what it was like to live it with him? You know? It's just not the easiest thing to always hear from the Most High. And I'm not saying it is. It's not. It's not always easy. But the Father still requires that we wait in His presence to see what it is that He wants for us. And when we don't do that, one of the signs is that we're going to be unstable in all of our ways. We're going to be double-minded, triple-minded, quadruple-minded. We're going to be making decisions after decisions after decisions, and it's not going to follow. And the Most High will not place His barakah on these decisions. And this particular decision that King Saul made would have led to the very death of his son. And he didn't seem to really be concerned about that. He didn't seem to want to protect him. He just said, okay, well, Jonathan, yeah, it fell on you. You will surely die. Really? Jonathan's like, I tasted a little honey on my rod and I'm going to die for this? But the people said, the Most High worked in your son today, King. Didn't you see it? Didn't you see that the Father gave him the victory? He will not die. He was working as the partner of Yahuah. He will certainly not die. We will protect him. We will stand in the gap and protect him from his father making rash decisions. And they did that. They stood up, all of Yasharal, and they defended Jonathan. They defended him. They were surety for him. They said, we're not going to let you hurt him. Not anymore. Hallelujah. So Shaul says, okay, I guess I'm done here. Guess I'm done. We're done fighting the Philistines for tonight. Let's just go sit down somewhere. And I guess that's what they did. Continuing. So Shaul established his sovereignty over Yasharal and fought against all his enemies on every side. Against Moab, against the people of Ammon, against Edom, against Zobah, and against the Philistines. And wherever he turned, he harassed them. And he gathered an army and attacked the Amalekites and delivered Yasharal from the hands of those who plundered them. This is really interesting as we read this. Shaul has been rejected by the Most High as being king. And the Most High has raised up a man after his own heart, and that is King Daud. And he has not yet been made king. Shaul is still king. And here we see the Most High granting him victories over his enemies. All because of that one victory on that one day that the Most High granted him through his son. It was almost as if redemption came to King Shaul through the actions of his son. And when we look at King Shaul as a typology of our men of Zion, as we did last week, we see the frailty, and we see the weaknesses, and we see the fear, and we see the trembling, and we see the indecision, and we see how sometimes you're just not sure which way to go. It feels like no matter what you do, you're not going to meet with good success. It feels like you're unappreciated. It feels like no one sees your efforts. And it feels like no matter what you do, it's wrong. This is the situation we see here in King Saul. But it's only wrong because he's not seeking the Father's face. He's leaning onto his own understanding. Could it be, O man of Zion, that you are leaning onto your own understanding? Are you living by bread alone? Or are you living by every word that proceeds from the mouth of Yahuah? Are you leaning onto your own understanding? Or are you leaning onto Yahuwah's? Are you trying to figure it out on your own? Are you going to how to gain friends and influence people's conferences? How to make $1 million in 3 months? How to start up a business and help others do it too? Are you trying to figure out how to live in this world, this wicked Babylon, and be successful in your own strength? Or are you seeking the Father? Are you seeking the Father to be successful? Are you seeking the Father to help you overcome your frailties? For that is the only way. The Most High used Jonathan, Saul's son, to be an example for him on this day. Jonathan showed Saul what the Father expects. He expects faith, amunah, bravery, courage, a willingness to put yourself in harm's way, to see if there's even a chance that the Father could fight on your behalf. And that great faith and confidence that Jonathan showed in the Father rewarded him with a victory. And all of Yasharal, they were baruched as a result of this great victory. The decisions that Jonathan made with his armor bearer, they were the decisions that King Saul should have been making. But he couldn't, because he was limp and halt and maimed and lamed and weak. He couldn't, because he still had frailty in his flesh. He still desired that the people love him. And if the people threatened to leave him, that would make him feel devastated. I wonder who in Shaul's life made him feel that they would leave him and make him devastated. I wonder if he was well loved and respected by his father, by his mother, by his brethren. I wonder how it was that he became so frail that he would be willing to make any decision just so people would love him. But be that as it may, whatever caused it, it was there. It influenced every decision that he made. Every decision he made was made in light of that frailty. If I make this decision, the people may not like me. When the decision should have been made by, this is what the Father says, and this is what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter what the people think. It doesn't matter what they feel. I love them, and I want to rule rightly on behalf of them, but ultimately, it's Yahuah's way or the highway. But for whatever reason, it was difficult for him to lead like that. And his weakness bled all over the nation of Yasharal. His bleeding places, his wounds, he bled all over the nation. And it affected them negatively until the Most High raised up his son to be an example unto him about how to walk before Yahuah and be thou perfect. And because of Jonathan, the Most High established the sovereignty of Shaul over the nation of Yasharal. And he fought against all of his enemies on all sides, and against Moab and Ammon and Edom and Zobah and the Philistines. And he harassed them. And he attacked the Amalekites. And he plundered those who plundered Yasharal. The Most High gave him victory over his enemies, all because of his son. Continuing. Verse 52. Now there was fierce war with the Philistines all the days of Shaul. And when Shaul saw any strong man or valiant man, he took him for himself. Hallelujah. He learned something. Perhaps he learned it from his son. His son was strong and his son was valiant. And at one point he was willing to throw him away. He was willing to decree and declare death over him. But at the end of Shaul's life, when he saw any strong or valiant men, he took him for himself and made him part of his army. He began to recognize some goodness, some strength, some level of bravery in the people that served under him. And perhaps he didn't have that kind of sight before. The Most High worked through his son to help him in this regard. And brothers and sisters, for this message applies to all of us. Even though this specifically relates to the men of Zion, daughters of Zion, you have something to learn here too. We all do. How do we look at the people who are under us, our children, our employees, for men, your wives, or those who are your friends? How do we look at them? Do we see the best in them? Or do we always look at them in terms of their frailty? Shaul led from his place of weakness. He could only see the weakness in others. He couldn't see the weakness in himself. And the Most High helped to give him the ability to see strength and bravery in others. And those he took into his camp, and he said, "You're going to be my soldiers." Now Shaul did not end well, not completely. But by the end of chapter 14 in 1 Samuel, we see what looks like a victory and what looks like grace. The grace that the Most High has shown upon this man, and that he desires to show and to shed abroad in the hearts of every man of Zion, every man who's ever had a frailty of flesh, every man who's ever been hurt and abused and kicked to the curb and counted out, every man who's ever made mistakes. Maybe they're incarcerated, maybe they've abused their wives, maybe they've done heinous and horrible things, but maybe they're coming before the Most High and they're saying, "I'm sorry. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what I was doing. My weakness was leading me and guiding me. That demonic voice in my ear was telling me to do those things, and I just gave into it, and I didn't know what I was doing. Help me. Help me. Grant me an example. Raise up my son after me, so that he might do what is pleasing in your sight, O Father." And the Father is faithful. So the Yasharal that has gone before us lived and existed in frailty. And we are the generation that comes after. We are the Jonathans. Saul is dead. He's buried and gone. We are the Jonathans. How will we handle this moment? Men of Zion, you are Jonathan. How will you handle this moment? Are you able to go into the enemy's camp and say, "Perhaps the Most High will grant us the victory"? Or are you going to be like your father Saul and sit under a pomegranate tree and hope for a better day? Yes, we've gone through things. Yes, Jim Crow, cultural appropriation, disenfranchisement, prison industrial complex, serial imprisonment, police brutality, Jim Crow, racism, prejudice, and everything that goes along with that. There's so much more. But are we going to focus on those things forever? Are we always going to be identified by our past? Are we always going to be Saul? Can't we step into being Jonathan? Victorious, warrior, brave, valiant? The Most High is looking for a few good men. And he sees what he has placed inside of each man of Zion. He sees because he knows, because he put it there. And it's time for the men of Zion to let Saul die and let Jonathan arise. It is time for each man of Zion to let Saul die and let Jonathan arise. Almighty man of valor, come forth and let the Most High work through you and do mighty deeds in and through your arms and your legs and your eyes and your mind and your heart. Come forth and see the victory that the Father desires to grant you. It's time to come forth. The Most High is looking for a few good men. He's looking for those who are brave and valiant and strong, because he wants to take those ones for himself. Will you volunteer for the Most High's army, O man of Zion? Are you willing to let go of your Saul days and embrace your Jonathan days? For the best years and days and moments and seconds are yet ahead of you. Forget those things that are behind and press forward to the mark of the prize of the high calling in Yahuah. Yahuah sees the Jonathan in you. Let him arise and let him come forth. O valiant man of Yahuah, arise. The Most High Yahuah hath need of thee. I pray this message has been a barakah to you today, and I thank you for joining me once again on the channel and for another teaching. It's time for all of us to stand up. And how do we stand up? By bowing the knee unto Yahuah, getting instructions from him as to the direction that we're to go, and then doing what he tells us to do. He has need of a few good men. Will you say yes to him today? If you will, put it in the comment section. Will you say yes? Let him know. And once you make your vow, be willing to honor it. Hallelujah, Yahuah. Well, thank you, brothers and sisters, for joining me once again on the channel and for another teaching. May the Most High Yahuah Baruch and keep you. And may he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may Yahuah lift up his countenance upon you and grant you shalom and shalom, peace in every area of your life. And may you allow Saul to fade away and allow the Jonathan within to arise and come forth, so that you may be all that the Most High desires for you to be. He sees what he has placed in you. He sees it, and he's calling it forth. Say yes, O mighty man of valor. Say yes. Shalom and shalom.
Thank you.